Welcome to the Pharmacist Voice Podcast, episode 237. I'm the host, Kim Newlove. Today's guest is Dr. Brigette Serfaty. Among other things, we'll be talking about mindset, meditation, mindfulness, her YouTube podcast, which is called Minding Your Minutes, and her business, which is called Aligned Engagement Strategies. If you're new to the Pharmacist Voice Podcast, welcome. Again, my name's Kim Newlove. I'm the host. I'm a pharmacist by training, but I'm not in clinical practice anymore. I made a career transition to voice actor and podcast host. Among other things, I narrate audiobooks for women pharmacist authors. I also provide medical narration to clients in the pharmaceutical, biotech, and continuing medical education industries. I also narrate content for explainer videos and e-learning projects. If you have a project in mind, contact me through my website, thepharmacistvoice.com. I was inspired by my nonverbal son who has autism to combine my background as a pharmacist with my speaking voice and launch my business, The Pharmacist Voice, in 2017. My son Craig helped me realize the power of having a voice and using it. My solo podcast episodes are about some aspect of being a pharmacist, a voice actor, a pharmacist podcaster, or my career transition from pharmacist to voice actor and podcast host. My interview shows feature a variety of people who use their voices to advocate for something, educate in some way, or entertain, so that you are inspired to use your voice too. This is episode 237, and you can find the show notes on my website, thepharmacistvoice.com. Just click on the podcast tab and find episode 237. Let me tell you a little more about Dr. Brigette Serfaty, then we'll dive right into the interview. Among other things, Dr. Brigette Serfaty is a pharmacist, college professor, executive well-being coach, wife, and mother. A lot of what we talk about today in the interview is from her expertise as a well-being coach. As an executive well-being coach, Brigette helps high-performing, high-achieving professionals stop overworking, create deeper connections, and restore balance and meaning to life. If you have not been to Brigette's website yet, check it out, aligned-engagement.com. Brigette's messaging is very descriptive. I love it. She helps people who are sick of feeling like they've forgotten how to relax and have fun in their few moments of downtime, and people who are worried about what will happen if they don't slow down and take better care of themselves. People who are exhausted from chasing perfection and criticizing themselves. Who does that sound like? I think a lot of pharmacists check those boxes, just my opinion. Brigette helps clients prioritize health and show up fully at work and at home without compromising what matters. Brigette helps clients reconnect with what's most important to them and create an action plan that aligns with their values. Brigette helps clients perform in a more creative, focused, and engaged way. Brigette helps clients implement strategies that fit into their lives now so they can stop feeling so frustrated and actually spend time on what they value most deeply without apologizing for it. Wouldn't that be nice? I love this messaging. It really speaks to me and makes me think about some people that I care about. To learn more about Brigette, check out the show notes on thepharmacistvoice.com. I've got a bio there. And to learn more about aligned engagement strategies, visit aligned-engagement.com. That's aligned-engagement.com. Now, without further ado, here's my conversation with the one, the only, Dr. Brigette Serfaty. Hi, Brigette. Welcome to the Pharmacist Voice Podcast.
Hi, Kim. I'm so glad to be here, and thank you for inviting me.
My pleasure. We've known each other for years, especially through Metapreneurs, and finally we get to do a podcast interview together.
I know. I'm so excited. So thank you. Let's roll.
Yes. All right. Yeah. Well, I last saw you in Kansas City, Missouri at the Metapreneurs Summit, and we had a good time. I got to experience something that was different from the year before. So you did the meditation, and then Peyton had something with quartz bowls. Is that right?
You're right. Yeah. So we did a combination of mindfulness meditation and sound healing, um, to allow the participants to experience settling into their nervous systems with meditation and then feeling the sound as it resonates through your body and meets your ears. I'm so curious about your experience because of your audio background, what you experienced. But yeah, it was super cool.
Yes, I gave you feedback live, but just for anybody listening who's curious about this, what is this about bowls and sound healing? What? I sat with my eyes closed and I listened to Brigette's voice, but also this woman named Peyton. She's a pharmacist. She was circling these quartz bowls that had water in them with a stick of some sort, for lack of a better term. And I experienced sound that way. Not only was I experiencing Brigette's voice, but I was experiencing the sound from these bowls. And as an audio engineer, I have really good ears. I can hear dog whistles. And I think that was probably why Brigitte was so interested in hearing, my experience. I heard chords, and at times, the sound coming from these bowls was so loud, in the vibrations perhaps were so loud in my ears that it was almost painful. And I was maybe 3 feet from the bowls, and it really wasn't that loud, but my interpretation was what it was. So, anyways, thanks for the experience.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for coming. Yeah, I love it when pharmacists are willing to experience something that's a little different than the traditional healing paths. So it was a pleasure to have you and everyone else there. Yeah, we can talk about that more if you want to, or whatever you want to talk about.
I want to start at the intersection of mindset and well being. Why don't we go there first?
Ooh, fun. I love that. I love that intersection. So I teach meditation in a number of places, including the University of Arkansas, where I work. So we teach mindfulness really as stress resilience and well-being for our faculty and students, and we also offer it to the community. Really, it came from COVID. We were all kind of locked up and trying to work through that, and so people really gravitated toward that practice to figure out how to take care of themselves in that really stressful time, and it's continued after that. So what I love about that is the staff that come and the students that come, we use mindfulness to settle them down enough so that they can pay attention to their own well-being. Because as you may know, sometimes in any clinical practice, we're kind of the last person on our own list. We're taking care of patients or we're taking care of other people. I know you certainly take care of other people as well. And sometimes we forget about really basic stuff like drinking water and taking a walk or showering or whatever. And so really the practice of mindfulness is just a way to start to pay attention to how you're really feeling in that moment so that you can take some action for your own well-being. And so that's really how I view those two practices. I think mindfulness and mindset is basic, just training to understand where are my thoughts and feelings right now about myself. And then what do I really need from a well-being perspective? It just raises the question, like, what do I even need? Because I forgot.
Brigitte, some people would say that what you're talking about is kind of woo-woo. What do you say to people who say that about what you're talking about?
I actually really love it when people say that's woo-woo because there's fantastic science about mindfulness. If you want to pull all the evidence and all the research, you certainly can. If you want to pull it from the Fortune 100 and 500 company positive intelligence realm of using it in corporate space, you can. So I love it when that question comes up. But really what people, once they experience the practice and just realize what it feels like to settle for a moment and maybe notice that their breath and their body, they kind of forget about the evidence. They don't really care so much. But those, like really heady left brain people, we have lots and lots of data and pictures. And the cool thing is there's also functional MRI data and PET scans. So you can see the changes in your gray matter in your brain, and you can certainly feel it in your body. And then you can see all the changes in your productivity if you do the practice. It's awesome. So I've got lots of ways to say, not so woo. But that's also why being a healthcare professional and teaching these practices is helpful. Sometimes it tends to give a little bit of credibility Although it doesn't matter. There are fabulous mindfulness teachers all over the place with great training. But I do use the healthcare training as an entry point for my left-brained science people who are like, I don't know about this. What do you mean crystal bowls? Yeah.
I'm sorry. I called them quartz bowls. They're
Yeah.
crystal bowls. Yes.
Yeah, and that's okay. Yeah, it's because it's really overlays of crystal and quartz and all sorts of minerals, and it's yeah, complicated.
Very interesting. Now, I'm interested in the transformation that you talked about with the students. You talk about
Mm.
somebody who's not ready to learn transforming into someone who is ready to learn just because you've changed their mindset. That has value.
Yeah, it does have value. And so the particular practice that we use for students, the mindfulness practice, it's very short interventions, and there is an app with that. So they love the technology because it gives them some connection with other people that are outside their small cohort. And the interventions themselves are 4 weeks, so it's 4 classes instead of like an 8 week 2 hours a week sort of class. They're just not really ready for that or interested. The mindfulness sessions themselves on the app are very short, so a couple of minutes at a time. It's very approachable, so they can figure out how to fit, and so can we. 2 minutes at a time into their day. So I use a couple of different apps for technology there, so that they can work it into their daily lives. So that really helps. But then the other side that they don't realize is how much they love the community, because a lot of the students have been remote, they've been online, and they've been missing that community aspect. So the ability to practice with other 20 somethings or younger or even older, it depends on the student, but to be able to practice with other people and talk about what's their experience, like, hey, I'm feeling a little anxious, is that weird? Or hey, my thoughts are bouncing all over the place, is that normal? And so we can really talk about, yes, that's what happens with your mind. It's not this quiet zen place all the time where you don't have thoughts. That's not mindfulness at all, but that's what we think it is. So we think we're supposed to have a particular experience, and then when they actually have an experience and are able to unpack it with their same age group, then it makes sense. It's not a bunch of crusty old science people telling them what to do.
Crusty old science people. I think you just described at least one of my professors from school.
Yeah, me.
God bless them. Oh, come on. Oh my gosh. Do you mind sharing the names of the apps?
Sure. And so what we use is Koru. It's Koru, mindfulness. So it was developed specifically for that 20-something age group, and it's awesome for students who are in health professions or any college students. I have 21 and 20-year-old stepdaughters and a 21-year-old daughter, so even they will practice. And then the other one that I use is Positive Intelligence, also fabulous. And that one we really use more for corporate audiences because the practices themselves are geared toward work and how do you fit it into a leadership and busy work environment context. So it really depends on the audience as to which of those apps that I use, but they're wonderful, and I'm always happy to talk about them.
Well, thank you for mentioning them. I must say, I have an iPhone and I wear one of those Oura rings,
Me
Oura.
too.
There, we're showing off our Oura
Uh-huh.
rings. Mine happens to be the silver colored one. Yours is gold, yeah?
No, it's silver.
Is it silver? Okay,
We're
sorry.
twins.
All right, we're twins. Very good. And in the Aura app, they have mindfulness and meditation type things.
Mm.
And I have listened to a couple of them with my son. And the cool thing about this ring, I got to go off on a tangent for just a second, is that it shows you your data, that your heart rate actually
Mhm.
slows. And it's just really cool. So I just wanted to bring that up. We
Yeah.
were talking about science earlier. More science. Yes, Aura
I
ring.
know. Yeah, with all of the science people, but I do think that with kids too, if they can see something like that, if they can see the data and that the breath changes their heart rate or it changes something that they can measure, they're more likely to do it, because I find with younger people, sometimes they're not that comfortable in their bodies. Like they want some sort of evidence, because they're pretty heady and they spend a lot of time online. And so this idea of like being in your body freaks them out a little bit. Like they don't want to be in their bodies. So I have to use the language that's, what are you noticing? What are you experiencing? So that they can talk about that in ways that are approachable.
Earlier, I had mentioned that I see the value of a student transforming from not being ready to learn to being ready
Mm.
to learn. For what other populations does the intersection of mindset and well being have value? Who else do you work with?
Oh my. I would say any busy professional who has forgotten that they need to take care of themselves. So, a lot of time, high achievers will really spend all their time and get their value from their work. And they don't realize sometimes how close they are to burnout. And so working with mindset to really look at, where are you placing that value? Is your belief that your value is based on your productivity, or is your value inherent? And if you were to take care of yourself, could you be even more effective at work? Could you have even better conversations? Could you lead better? It starts to get people's attention when their health is suffering or their relationships are suffering in some way. And so that's the group that I work with from a private client perspective, is really professionals. Sometimes they're corporate people, sometimes they're health professionals, often pharmacists, but just on that worry about themselves from a long-term health and burnout perspective. And they're trying really hard not to go down that burnout slide. Or maybe they've already been down it and don't want to go back. And so they know they need to do something differently. And often the mindset is just habitual. I don't have time is the very famous line. I don't have time. I don't have time. I don't have time. I'm too busy. And so we do a lot of work around letting go of those, kind of productivity myths, like busyness is your value, and you wear that like a badge of honor. Brene Brown uses that language. And so really helping to understand that when you're in that busy mindset trap, it's really not your best work, even though we think it is, because we're checking all the things off the to-do list. So the mindset pieces are important there, just to really give people permission to spend the time to take care of themselves in really short increments during the day, because that's the hardest thing. And you probably know it too. When you're busy taking care of other people, when you're busy taking care of your work, you forget, like, oh yeah, 2 minutes to take a breath or to recenter and figure out what I should be working on, instead of just like snacking on my email all day. Maybe I actually would do something more valuable. So it's really an important conversation. So I have all sorts of wonky techniques to work with mindset, plus some really practical ones. And so one I'd love to share with you is, I mentioned positive intelligence. There's a saboteur inventory that's part of that positive intelligence work. It is so interesting to give names to those voices in your head that tell you, all of the critical thoughts. But who is the voice that's driving the bus? Is it my controller, my hyperachiever, my avoider, my victim, my hypervigilant? All of those people, that kind of in the committee in our heads. And so that gets the corporate folks' attention, is like, oh, I am really spending a lot of time in this negative thought spiral, instead of being in a more sage perspective or a more wise perspective to get the best work done. So that saboteur inventory is very interesting to people. So I would encourage your listeners to take a look at it with positive intelligence and saboteur inventory. Because it really it does get your attention in ways to say, oh, I am caught in this kind of spin cycle of my own judgment and my own thoughts, either about myself or other people or circumstances, when I could be really spending time doing something more productive. So, whether that's taking care of myself or doing work that I love or taking care of other people in a really present way. So I love that work. I love to share it. So thank you for asking. Long-winded answer.
I love that you mentioned that saboteurs
Mm-hmm.
inventory. I have not done it yet, but I've heard about it this spring from two different people, Dr. Lauren Castle
Oh,
and Dr. Helen Sarami, who's a trauma specialist.
awesome. Yes, and we went through the program at different times, and I love it when people mention the same work because it means, oh, this might be relevant to me.
Right, it's validating.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, it's great work, and what I like about that one as well, that whole program is it's really bite sized so that you can implement it into the day. And so there are just really short, a couple minute practices that are designed to just interrupt the thought pattern and see, which mindset is present for me right now and what could I do to shift into a more sage perspective, a wiser perspective. And again, it just brings it back around to more effective communication. So you think about using your voice, think about using that voice, your wise voice instead of the complainy, whiny, miserable, negative voice that's in our head a lot of times.
Oh, good point. I love learning about stuff like that because speaking of mindfulness, once you are aware of what your saboteurs are, I know I have not taken the assessment yet, but I feel like I will be able to interrupt the negative
Mm-hmm.
and focus on the positive and try to attract solutions instead of focusing on the distractions.
Yeah, that's right. And so the work is really around engaging the more wise problem solving capabilities. So how could I empathize with the person or myself? How can I innovate and explore? And then ultimately, how do I take the best action? So it is a pattern interrupt. And I'll just tell you, it'll be interesting to see yours. Mine are a combination. My top saboteurs are a combination of hyperachiever, avoider. So that's a fun combination. So I put so much on my calendar, I can't possibly do it, and then I have to avoid something. So I'm on to me.
Well, I will have to let you know what my results are. I'll have to probably talk about it in a podcast episode because I enjoy sharing that sort of thing with my audience too. It's self-awareness.
Yeah.
There's a lot of personality tests out there. Would you say that the saboteurs assessment is one of those personality assessments?
Yeah, I don't know that I think of it as a personality assessment as much as a style assessment. But yes, there are certain tendencies that you'll notice, but it really depends on the type of situation as to which of the saboteurs comes up. And so we all have all of the different saboteurs in various amounts. So it's a little bit less personality and more just situational what's going to come up at that particular time. So it's very useful. The other one that I really like is sparketypes also. So again, not really personality as much as looking at the type of work that you love. So I kind of weave that in with the mindfulness and mindset work because work is so important to us. Like the work that you love is so much a part of well-being. So that's another one that students really like too, and all of us, just to know, like, am I really spending my time in work that lights me up and feeds me versus work that is really draining? So those things kind of tie together because the negativity is so draining. And then when you're aware of it, it's like, ooh, I'd like to do something that makes me a little happier.
Yes, but you have to be aware
Mm-hmm.
first. So, yeah, mindful of it. Well, Brigette, we've got 3 words that start with M: mindset, mindfulness, and meditation. These are your jam. These are things you advocate
Yeah.
for. Now, I understand that you have somehow monetized your expertise and your advocacy. Can you tell me a little bit about your 2 businesses, Aligned Engagement Strategies and Minding Your Minutes?
Sure. And so I appreciate you asking that question. And so I do have a coaching business that's on the side of my faculty role, and I love it. It is my jam and my joy. And so the monetized part is really the one-to-one coaching and group coaching that comes with some training on meditation or mindfulness if the person is open to it. But typically we're trying to solve a work problem or a stress problem. And so that's how people come in. They're worried about themselves in some way. And so depending on the program that they're interested in, we're either working one-to-one to help them shift into a career or some well-being strategies that really help them. So they're looking at changing their lifestyle in some way. The group programs are similar, but you have a cohort of people that's also trying to change their lifestyle to incorporate well-being. And sometimes that group dynamic really helps to say, oh yeah, me too, I'm struggling with the same thing. So there's some built-in accountability around movement or finding a job that you love or eating better or sleep or any of the lifestyle medicine pillars that are part of being well and healthy. And then retreats are part of that as well. So retreats usually look like meditation and movement, with some bit of we're also going to be outside and we're going to have great food. So that's where the fun part comes in. You mentioned entertainment. So I love to get people in a room and experience things they've never experienced before. So sometimes it's entertaining and sometimes it's highly vulnerable, but you leave feeling changed. So those are the different ways that I've monetized that around the edges of a full-time career. So I am probably my best client. I have to work this system all the time. The mindset, the well-being habits, the meditation. I can tell when I'm off balance. So here we are.
I would say that you're a role model who walks the walk that you talk.
And then I fall off the wagon. Thank you. And then I get back on. So
relapse and recovery are part of a lot of life, not just addiction medicine, which we're not talking about, but I mean, in life, we recover from something like burnout, and then we fall off the wagon, right? We relapse, and then we recover and we relapse, and we try to get those peaks and troughs to even out a little bit so that when you fall off, you don't fall as hard. And when you're trying to get back on the wagon, you're not trying to climb quite as far. So relapse and recovery are just a part of life. Mm-hmm. So
I love that you said
you're normal.
You know, especially for the students and the younger people, they really think of like that there's no option for failure, and that's all part of it. I mean, you are going to fail. You're going to fall off the surfboard. You're going to fall off the wagon, and then you're going to figure out how to get back on it. And that's actually where you learn the most. And I know you know that too. Like your new career came from that of like, what do I want my life to look like? That's cool.
Yes. Yeah. I had to abandon my clinical career because of family circumstances, but then I found something I was passionate about, and I'm slowly building my business, and I love what I do. Yeah. But yeah, there are peaks and troughs with my business. You know, there's feast and famine and all the things. But thank you for saying that even though I call you a role model, you know that sometimes you are not perfect. You are not the embodiment of everything that should be. And kids, especially students listening to this, you need to know we adults, we grown-ups, we 40-plus-year-olds, we're not perfect, and we struggle sometimes too. And perfectionism is not something that you should strive for. You should not strive to be perfect. Brigette, would you like to talk about that a little bit?
Ooh, would I love to talk about that a little bit? Yeah, I mean, I see it in lots of us, you know, because a lot of times we're educated to believe that, or maybe it was part of the messaging in our families, or certainly in the educational system, you're rewarded for, you know, doing well, all that activity and accomplishment. And so sometimes we get that idea, you know, that we're supposed to be perfect. Looking back, I've absolutely learned more from all those times that I wasn't and didn't do well. And so I have this conversation with my husband all the time where he'll say, you know, you're my perfect woman. And I'll go, I don't even want to be perfect. Like it irritates me. And so now it's become a joke where I'm going to dive off the pedestal just to prove a point. We actually use some of the inventories for perfectionism and imposter syndrome with our students to help them understand that if you're stuck in this perfectionism or this kind of fixed mindset place, you're actually not going to be able to be as vulnerable or have the kind of success because you're not going to ask for feedback. And so the perfectionism as a type of imposter syndrome comes up a lot. And so we have specific conversations, and we had one actually earlier today about using the idea of brainstorming failure points ahead of time. And so what are not just the barriers, but what are the failure points that we can anticipate so we can fail fast and learn from it? So just normalizing that conversation, and I know you know it in entrepreneurship. Well, that didn't work. Shoot, I lost a bunch of money on that. Let's not do that again. It happens all the time. Instead of just continuing down this path of, let me just burn in on this idea, even though it's not working. So I think just giving students and all of us, not just students, but examples of, here's this really awful thing that happened. Here's what I learned from it. So in positive intelligence land, we would call that what is the opportunity? What is the lesson? What is the learning? It's just a gift and opportunity that comes from those failures. So I think if I wish my parents had those conversations with me. I didn't even know it was a good idea to fail when I was young. And now I have lots of experience. How about you?
Yeah, well, the very first thing that I tried to do when I started my business was narrate pharmacy continuing education journals into audio format. I could not find clients. I pitched a heck of a lot of them, and they all turned me down or didn't respond. Therefore, I pivoted. And that's what you have to do when you experience failure. Yeah, you want to make sure that your email went through, or whoever was intended to receive that sample, in my case, received it before you give up. I mean, sometimes junk mail happens, people, but when it comes to actually making a decision because it was a failure, then that's what you do. You pivot. And for me, I pivoted to audiobooks, medical narration, and podcasting, and it has worked out just fine for me. But without that failure, I would not have pivoted. If it would have worked out, I would have been doing something else. But I failed, and I continue to fail as I go on. There are things I pitch people all the time for stuff that they don't end up buying, and it happens.
Yeah.
And you learn your lesson, you take the skills that you learned while you were doing the thing, and you use it for something else. And that's my take on it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Brigette.
Yeah, I know, mine too. And I actually really love the look back. And I do that pretty often. I have a long corporate career. And I was downsized in 2020, like right after when the world really started to shut down. And so initially that's like, this is awful. And then it has become such a gift. But you don't feel it in the moment. I mean, that air quote failure, now what I look at as a blessing, that is extraordinarily painful. And so I don't want to gloss over that those failure points don't hurt, because they do. But then you really decide the pivot, there's a decision point. And that's where the kind of the magic happens is what do I want to do with this, in this new time and in this new space? You can really ask some deeper questions. Like, that thing didn't work. Maybe it wasn't supposed to work. And in this particular case, it really wasn't. It was time for me to change. I had a 27-year corporate career, and I was ready for something else. So here we are.
And here we are. You've got your businesses where you're doing mindset, mindfulness, and meditation, and you're also an educator now. And I would say from the outside, you appear to be successful and happy. Brigette, are you successful and happy?
Yeah, I am. And I define success really as do I feel well and am I happy? And yeah, I am. There are financial goals that I'd love to reach. So is everything air quote perfect? No, but do I get to create and work with awesome people and experiment and try new things and really feel good about what I'm doing? I have a sense of purpose and mission that I did not have at one point in my career. So yeah, I would say happy and successful, as long as you don't look too closely at my bank account some months.
I'm in the gig economy, and I think you are too. Yeah. I mean, you get a gig and you do the job, you get paid, and it's like, all right, who else has got my money? Let's go ahead and find something else. Yeah.
I'm still working on pipeline for sure. But in terms of the work itself, it's enormously fulfilling. And it also gives me time to take care of my own body and my spirit and my mind and my people. And that's really what I was looking for is a way to feel more balanced, is the word people use. And it doesn't always feel balanced, but it feels full and it feels joyful, and it really feels like it fits me. And that's what I was looking for. I was really looking for fit and integration more than balance. And so I've been able to integrate all the things that I love into something that's really fun. So JOB. And then also my coaching side hustle. So both of those things are enormously fulfilling to me.
Congratulations on your success. I totally enjoy knowing you and running into you at Metapreneurs every year and seeing you online and all the things you do. And as we start to wrap this up, I also want to talk about your YouTube channel. You have a Minding Your Minutes YouTube channel. Can you talk about that? What is it? What's on there?
Yeah, I'd love to talk about that. And thank you for asking. And you will be on there soon, I hope.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I love to feature. So it's a combination of things, but really oriented around this idea of well-being and how do you take care of yourself in the real world. And so there are a variety of experts on there. So let's say lifestyle medicine folks who really advocate for different practices. I recently had a guest that talked about nature as one of the well-being pillars. Other mindfulness folks, and other coaches who are really looking at ways to help their people, whoever their audiences are, to implement strategies. And then we have some real conversations, so other pharmacy entrepreneurs as well, some real conversation about times maybe that you haven't taken as good a care of yourself. So we all know what we should do. And then sometimes we still forget because we're entrepreneurs and we love what we do and we overwork and we, work 13 hours at a time. And then we have to look up and remember to feed ourselves. So it's just fun.
It's a confessional. Now, hold on. This is a confessional. Your YouTube channel is a confessional.
It is. It's kind of a confessional, but it's also educational. So it's a little bit confession and it's a little bit of education. And there are also mindfulness practices because I wanted people to have a place to go for some free content. And then also just to meet other lifestyle medicine people. So, that the field itself is fairly new. And so people hear lifestyle change and they go, oh, that's too hard. Because it's hard to change your lifestyle sometimes. But when you change it incrementally with strategy, I want to feature people that can help other humans change habits in a really approachable way. So I just like the mix of conversation there. So you'll get a mix of lifestyle and mindfulness and meditation and even some financial advising for people who have really money mindset type formats and are focused on changing that self-talk around money.
It sounds like a great YouTube channel. When I went to it, I noticed that there were, for lack of a better term, free samples for the mindfulness. And I think anybody who has not experienced it yet, this is the place you should go, the YouTube channel. And it's the Minding Your Minutes YouTube channel, correct?
Yes, it is Minding Your Minutes. And I've used that framework for a long time because it reminds me that it's just minutes. You don't need an hour to go to an exercise class. You just need a moment to recenter. And so I think that framework is approachable. So thank you for asking about that. And that will continue to grow. I've got a number of guests lined up for that. And then I'll continue to, as people ask for certain types of mindfulness practices for certain, maybe it's one for anxiety, maybe it's one for time management. As I get requests, I'll post them there as well. Love to have you subscribe.
Yes, everybody subscribe. Minding Your Minutes YouTube channel with Dr. Brigette Serfaty.
Thanks.
Awesome. Brigette, thank you so much for being here. I want to open up the floor to you. Anything else you want to mention? Anything that you want to sell or any websites you want people to visit? The floor is yours, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. And in terms of selling, I'm always happy to talk to folks about their well-being. Whether it's one-on-one coaching or groups. I do have a retreat coming up in the winter, which I have not posted on my website yet because I am circling around the date finalization, but it'll be in December. And you're welcome to also look at my website. So aligned-engagement.com is my website. And I love to schedule just discovery calls for well-being. Sometimes people just need a voice for a few moments to say, here's what's up for me, whether coaching is of interest or not. So that's always an option, and you can book through my website as well. So yeah, thanks, Kim. I appreciate that. And I really appreciate the invitation to be on your podcast, because I've been looking forward to it for a while.
Well, thank you for being here. It's great that we could finally connect on a podcast episode, and I look forward to seeing you around the internet, of course, and hopefully at an event in person someday again soon.
Yeah, I would love that.
All right. Thanks again, Brigette. You take care.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to episode 237 of the Pharmacist Voice podcast. Visit thepharmacistvoice.com to read the show notes. In the show notes, you'll find a link to Brigette's business, Aligned Engagement Strategies, her YouTube channel, her social media links, my social media links, and more. Please reach out to both of us and connect. If you know someone who would like this episode, please share it with them. And subscribe to or follow the Pharmacist Voice podcast on your favorite podcast player and YouTube to get each new episode right when it comes out. Join me next Friday, August 18th, for my summer update. My seasonal updates give you an opportunity to get to know me better as a person as I update you on my family, which includes my husband, my kids, etc., my podcast, my business, and what I've been listening to, reading, watching, and playing. Thanks for listening today. I'll talk to you next Friday.